Now, you, as I understand it, you never got in the ring with Bruiser, even though you were around him a lot.
No,
Am I understanding that correctly? And why was that? Was it just something that just never crossed your path?
because I didn't like to get the dog shit beat out of me. That's one thing.
Sure. Okay.
Because that's what got him over. He just beat guys up.
Right.
Not literally, but he was a little tougher and a little stiffer, that we say, than the ordinary guy. See, Brody, he had one style, his. You either worked his style or you didn't have a choice. But
Yeah.
no, but I rode with him several times. I went on a trip to Japan with him, which is what opened my eyes to Bruiser Brody style. And I actually saw, I'd step out of the dressing room every time he would go to the ring, and I saw this. And I could see them running from him. Brody was a big guy, 6'6", about right at 300, waving that chain, going whoosh, whoosh. And those little Japanese people, they're not, they're kind of short, they're not very big, and they was running, and some of them were actually running for their lives. Some of them were kind of laughing, kind of knowing that he's not going to hit them, but some of them didn't know that. And then he would just go and he would take that trip around the arena in the stands with the fans, and then he'd get into the ring and they'd start the match. And I thought that was, and once I saw that, I said, well, hell, I saw what I knew how he worked. But that's what I wanted to see, is how the fans would run from him. They would run from him, Brody, and Hansen.
See, that's fascinating. I can only imagine. I know his relationship, behind the scenes with Hansen was, something that I think was very near and dear in that way. But I think you bring up a really interesting point, which I personally would love to dive into a little bit, is the fact that there was this thing sort of teetering on the edge, Dutch, of, there was always this danger around him. Like you said, when he came into the arena, to the forum, you felt like anything could happen, and there was, violence was about to erupt, and that was the excitement of it and the entertainment of it, if you will. But I think that really comes into play later, and we'll jump into this probably in a little bit. But the perception of reality for even the crowds in Puerto Rico, the night that all this happened, people not really understanding and feeling like, first of all, is this really a dangerous, out of control guy? Was he truly a barbarian, to use the word you used earlier? And if that's the case, like, you could almost imagine when the conflict erupted, like the interpretation of that. And again, we'll come back to that, I think, in a bit. But I think that was something that always was around him, but added to the excitement and the energy of him. And that this is the lore that surrounded this guy, like it preceded him. And I think that's a really important aspect. And also what drew me to the potential of telling about a guy who also was a walking dichotomy. And, I would assume, the Dutch Mantell that I know, I don't want to be presumptuous. I mean, you're a super great, nice guy, but you could also play and be the other side of you, the bad guy. Is that duality of character? I mean, can you speak to that? What is that like, though, to kind of carry that, and how much of that did you commit to? Because this applies, I think, to Frank, to Bruiser, is how much of that is something that what was that like to carry that, outside the ring and inside the ring? And is that, for those of us who aren't, don't do that and haven't had that experience, what is that like? Is it confusing? Is it a psychological, excuse my French, mind fuck? What is that like,
No, it's just, you do it automatically. Brody, when he's going down the street, he's so big, people are going to look at him because of the way he looked. He looked like, don't mess with him.
Yeah.
He just had a sign that says, don't even speak to me. I mean, it's just the look of him. Now, if you sit down and talk to him, very intelligent man, highly intelligent. And I didn't know this till later on, that he was an accountant. I think that's what he did. A former football player. And he tried the accounting work. He told me, he said, hey, he didn't want that. And I guess he met the Funks, Dory and Terry. They kind of broke him in from West Texas State. And that's the same university that Tony Blanchard went to. I think Stan Hansen went there. And the $1 Million Man, DiBiase, went there. And that is actually Wrestler U, is West Texas State. So, and when he got in there, he had had so much size to him, and he was a great athlete. So he had really no I mean, his success was built in. He carried it with him. Sometimes when you dig back deep into Brody's work, he in Japan especially,
Sure.
he wasn't considered a wrestler. He was like more like a god.
Yeah, he was. Still is.
And I read the reason he started taking that and waving that chain around his head is to keep people away from him. Because when he would go, people would want to touch him. And he wanted the people to stay back from him. That's why he took the chain. But wow, to see how they reacted to him, and I can see the appreciation for wrestling, and I don't know how it is now, but years ago was totally different than the United States. The Japanese fans were always very polite. They didn't have chairs. They would sit on the floor, literally, and they'd bring a little thing to sit on, and they would sit on the floor and were very quiet during the matches. I mean, for an American wrestler, I went over there and they're so quiet. And they told me they're going to be quiet. And I'm thinking, damn, am I doing something wrong or what? They're not saying nothing. But, and when a comeback was made, they wouldn't scream for the comeback to be made, but only on the punches. Whoa. Them quiet. Whoa. And it was like a kind of a medley, a melody going on. But very, very unique fans, very polite. And it's something that if you've never witnessed or experienced, it's a totally different feeling.
I love that you brought that up. And I just want to say one thing about that. If anybody gets a chance who hasn't had a chance to see some of these great, again, iconic matches in Japan, it is almost like a temple-like experience because of the reverency that it feels like. The vibe in the room is vastly and culturally different than it is in the United States. And it is fascinating. I can only imagine as a performer, because you do kind of feed off that energy. It's a very different kind of energy. It doesn't mean the energy is not there, but it is. It's not loud and boisterous and electric like that. It's almost like a church or a temple in some sense. And I think that speaks to something like when you use that word that he was perceived like, there's only a few of them like that, but that even to this day, like he's revered. He was like a god there. And speaks to how talented the guy was too. Let's not forget. I mean, the talent was ridiculous. It was off the charts. I mean, off the charts, you know? And
somebody said, well, why did guys like Abdullah and Hansen and Brody get over so strong in Japan? I said, well, one reason, they beat the shit out of people.
Yeah.
They put those guys in there and they just beat the living crap out of them. And then I don't care how bad you beat them up. I'd see them in the dressing room. They'd go up to Brody. Oh, Saku. They were and they were appreciative that he actually beat them up. And they were probably hurting